I'd always considered myself a reasonable person. I wasn't the type to jump to conclusions or let jealousy cloud my judgment. But as I sat in my car outside our house, my mind raced through the small, almost invisible changes in Lily. Every smile she gave her phone, every vague excuse about late work meetings, every moment she seemed lost in her own world felt like a red flag I had somehow missed. Lily was the woman I'd built my life around, someone who knew me as well as I knew myself. Or at least, I had believed that to be true. It was these little details, the way she suddenly guarded her phone, the hints of perfume she didn't wear at home, the way her gaze drifted into the distance when I spoke, that started to gnaw at me. So here I was, outside our own house, waiting for her to return from another late meeting, my mind filling with questions I didn't want to answer. I hadn't intended to follow her, to go this far, but the uncertainty was unbearable. The evening air was cool, and as I sat in my car, watching the front porch light flicker on and off, I couldn't help but feel a strange sense of dread. When she finally pulled into the driveway, I watched her closely as she stepped out of the car. She looked around, almost cautiously, and I quickly slouched down, hoping she hadn't noticed me. She moved with a lightness, a strange sense of energy that I hadn't seen in a long time. She didn't come straight inside but stayed on the front step, scrolling through her phone with a small, private smile on her face. My heart sank. I knew that look. It was the same smile she used to have when we just started dating, when every word and touch between us was new and exciting. And now, here she was, wearing that same look for someone else. The moment passed quickly. She slipped her phone into her bag and walked inside. I sat there, trying to make sense of what I'd seen. The weight of doubt pressed down on me, a slow, creeping heaviness that left me feeling empty and raw. After a few moments, I finally started the car and drove away, my mind churning with the realization that something had to be done. Over the next few days, I paid closer attention, noticing things I had either ignored or brushed off before. She was getting up earlier, dressing up more carefully even for casual outings. I even noticed a few missed calls from unknown numbers on our home phone, though she quickly dismissed them, saying it was probably telemarketers. Normally, I would have believed her. But now, with that seed of doubt planted firmly in my mind, everything felt like part of a larger, hidden picture. One evening, I decided to test her reaction. As she was getting ready for bed, I casually mentioned, "I was thinking of coming by your office tomorrow, maybe we could have lunch together?" She froze for just a moment, the makeup brush paused mid-swipe. It was a fraction of a second, but it was enough. "Oh," she said, forcing a smile, "tomorrow's actually packed with meetings. We'll barely have time for a coffee break." She shrugged, going back to her routine. "But thanks for the offer." I watched her, my heart pounding. There was a tension in her shoulders, a guardedness that hadn't been there before. She was hiding something. I was sure of it now. But what? The next day, unable to stand the suspense, I decided to go to her office anyway. If she was there, she'd be surprised but probably pleased. If she wasn't, well, I wasn't sure what I would do. As I walked into the lobby, I approached the receptionist, flashing my best friendly smile. "Hey, I was just wondering if Lily was free. Thought I'd surprise her for lunch." The receptionist, a young woman with bright, cheerful eyes, looked at me with a puzzled expression. "Oh, I'm sorry, sir, but Lily isn't in the office today. She's working off-site, I think." I felt a cold wave wash over me. I forced a smile, thanked her, and walked out, my mind racing. So she wasn't at work. And she had lied about her schedule. I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel, trying to breathe through the mix of anger and betrayal bubbling up inside me. That evening, I decided to confront her, to get the truth. She walked in, her expression cheerful, her face slightly flushed in a way that made my stomach turn. "Hey," I greeted her, my voice calm despite the storm raging inside me. "How was work?" "Oh, busy as always," she replied, taking off her jacket. I barely had time to breathe. I waited, watching her carefully. "Funny, I stopped by your office today." The color drained from her face, and she froze, her gaze darting to the floor. I was actually off-site. You know, meetings, right?" I said, keeping my tone even. "But they said you were working off-site the whole day. How come you didn't mention that?" She hesitated, and I could see her struggling to come up with an excuse. It was a last-minute thing, just one of those. Her voice trailed off, and the look in her eyes told me everything I needed to know. The air between us grew tense, filled with the silence of all the words we weren't saying. I took a step back, feeling the weight of the truth settle over me. "I don't know what's going on, Lily," I said finally, my voice low, "but I think it's time you told me the truth." She looked at me, her eyes wide and scared, and for a brief moment, I thought she might actually come clean. But then she shook her head, forcing a smile. "James, you're overreacting. It's just work. There's nothing to worry about." Her words rang hollow, and I could feel the distance between us growing wider, like a chasm that neither of us knew how to cross. That night, she went to bed early, leaving me alone in the quiet of our house, wondering how I'd missed the signs, how I'd let things get this far. The following day, determined to get to the bottom of things, I decided to take matters into my own hands. I called Tom, my closest friend and confidant, and told him everything. He listened quietly, his voice calm and steady. "James, I know this is hard, but maybe it's time you did some digging. If she's hiding something, you need to know." I nodded, feeling a renewed sense of determination. I couldn't just sit by and let my life fall apart. I had to act. That evening, I waited until Lily was asleep before checking her phone. She always left it on the bedside table, and I picked it up carefully, scrolling through her messages, her call history. Nothing. Everything looked normal, clean. Too clean. Frustrated, I was about to give up when I noticed a second messaging app, one I didn't recognize. My heart pounded as I opened it, scrolling through the conversations. There, buried among casual chats, was a thread that made my blood run cold. She had been messaging someone named Sam, messages filled with laughter, heart emojis, and words that cut deeper than any knife. I put the phone down, my mind reeling. The evidence was there, undeniable and painful, staring me in the face. This wasn't just a suspicion. It was real. And I knew in that moment that the life I'd believed in, the woman I'd loved, had been hiding a side of herself I had never known. As I lay there, staring at the ceiling, I felt a strange, hollow calm settle over me. I had wanted the truth, and now I had it. But the question remained, what was I going to do about it? The morning after I discovered Lily's messages with Sam, everything felt different. The house was filled with the same familiar smells, the same comforting routines, but I could feel the weight of her betrayal in every corner, in every glance. I forced myself to act normal, to play along, because I wasn't ready to confront her. Not yet. I needed to know more, to understand just how deep her deception went. Lily moved through her morning routine as if nothing was wrong. She kissed me goodbye, a routine gesture that now felt hollow, and left for work. As soon as I heard her car pull away, I picked up my phone and dialed Tom. He answered on the first ring, his voice steady. "I found something," I said, keeping my voice low despite the empty house. "She's been messaging a guy named Sam." There was a pause, and then Tom's voice came through, calm but serious. "Do you want me to help you figure out who he is?" "Yes," I replied, my mind racing. "I need to know who this guy is, where he works, everything." Tom agreed, promising to do some digging, and I hung up, feeling a strange sense of relief. I wasn't alone in this anymore. Whatever secrets Lily was keeping, I was one step closer to the truth. Later that day, Tom called back with news. "I found something," he began, his voice hesitant. "I don't know if you're ready for this, but Sam isn't just some random guy. He's someone from your past." I felt a cold chill settle over me. "What do you mean?" "He's the same Sam you knew back in college. You remember, the guy Lily dated before you two started going out?" The words hit me like a punch to the gut. Memories flooded back, scenes from our college days where I had first met Lily. She had been dating Sam back then, a charming but elusive type who seemed to have his own agenda. They'd broken up, and not long after, she and I had started dating. I'd always assumed she'd moved on from him completely. "Are you sure?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Positive," Tom replied. "He even works in the same field as her. It looks like they reconnected recently." The pieces were falling into place, but the picture they formed was darker than I had imagined. The man she had been messaging wasn't just some random fling. He was someone she had once loved, someone who had been a part of her life before I was even in the picture. "What do you want to do?" Tom asked, his voice cautious. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the decision before me. "I need to see them together," I said finally. "If she's lying to me, I want to catch her in the act." The next day, I set my plan into motion. Lily had mentioned she would be working late again, and I pretended to believe her, giving her the same supportive nod I always had. She smiled, thanking me for understanding, but there was a flicker of something in her eyes, a mixture of guilt and relief, as if my acceptance made her lies easier to tell. As soon as she left, I waited a few minutes before heading out myself. Tom had told me where Sam worked, and after a short drive, I parked across the street, keeping an eye on the entrance. I wasn't sure what I expected, but the sight of Lily arriving a few minutes later, her face lighting up as she walked inside, made my heart ache in ways I couldn't describe. I waited, watching as the minutes ticked by. I wasn't sure how long I could sit there, waiting in the cold silence of my car, my mind spinning with images of them together. But finally, they emerged. She was laughing, her hand resting on his arm as they walked down the street, completely oblivious to the world around them. The pain was unbearable, a raw, searing wound that left me feeling hollow. I felt a surge of anger, a desire to confront them right then and there, but I forced myself to stay calm. If I acted now, I'd only give her the chance to deny it, to twist the truth into something she could manipulate. No, I needed a different approach. That night, I waited until she was asleep before gathering her laptop and phone, taking them into the living room where I could work undisturbed. I wasn't proud of what I was doing, but I didn't care. I needed answers. I started with her laptop, scrolling through files, emails, anything that might reveal the depth of her lies. And then, tucked away in a hidden folder, I found what I was looking for: old messages between her and Sam, dating back months. They spoke of memories from college, moments they had shared, regrets and unresolved feelings that she had apparently never let go of. But it wasn't just messages. There were photos too, some of them recent, showing them together at various places I didn't recognize. A coffee shop, a park, even a beach, places she had told me she was visiting with friends. Each image felt like a dagger, each smile a reminder of how deeply she had betrayed me. But the messages continued, revealing even more. I could see how she had slowly, almost imperceptibly, distanced herself from me, using excuses and lies to create a separate life with Sam. She had confided in him, telling him things she hadn't told me, secrets I hadn't known. It was clear that this wasn't a fling, it was an emotional relationship, one built on trust and intimacy that she had deliberately withheld from me. And then I found the final piece, a message she had written but never sent, a draft that laid bare the truth I had been avoiding. In it, she spoke of feeling trapped, of questioning whether she had made the right choice in marrying me, of wondering if she should have stayed with Sam. She admitted that she didn't know if she could let him go, even if it meant hurting me. I closed the laptop, the weight of her words pressing down on me. I had known there was more to her betrayal, but seeing it in her own words, written with a raw honesty she hadn't shared with me, made it all too real. The woman I thought I had loved, the woman I thought had loved me, was gone. In her place was someone I didn't recognize, someone who had been lying to me for months, maybe even years. The next morning I couldn't look at her. She moved around the kitchen, humming to herself as if nothing was wrong, as if the life we had built together hadn't crumbled beneath us. I felt a wave of anger rise within me, but I swallowed it, forcing myself to wait. When she left for work, I called Tom, telling him everything I had found. He listened in silence, his voice steady and supportive, reminding me that I wasn't alone in this. "You need to confront her, James," he said finally. "She's gone too far. You deserve to know the truth, no matter how much it hurts." I knew he was right. This couldn't go on. The lies, the deceit, it was too much. I couldn't keep living with a woman who had betrayed me so completely. That night, as she walked through the door, I felt a strange calm settle over me. I watched her as she moved around the room, my gaze steady, my resolve unbreakable. She paused, sensing the tension, her eyes meeting mine with a flicker of guilt. Lily, I said, my voice low but firm. We need to talk. Lily froze, her hand halfway to setting down her purse. I watched the color drain from her face, and for a moment, there was only silence. The kind of silence that fills a room and makes every heartbeat sound like a drum. James, she finally whispered, her voice barely audible. Sit down, I said, my voice controlled but firm. I wasn't here to play games. We need to have an honest conversation, Lily. For once. She glanced at the door as if calculating an escape route, but then slowly walked to the chair across from me, her gaze dropping to the floor. She seemed to shrink before me, the guilt on her face undeniable. Where were you today? I asked, though I already knew the answer. At work, she replied automatically, her voice small. I shook my head, the anger simmering beneath my calm exterior. Stop lying, Lily. I know you weren't at work. I followed you yesterday. I saw you with him. Her eyes widened, and for a moment, I thought I saw a flicker of relief, as if she was glad to finally be forced to admit the truth. But then she looked down again, her hands twisting together. James? I'm sorry, she murmured. I didn't mean for it to go this far. Then why did it? My voice rose, frustration boiling over. Why did you feel the need to sneak around, to lie to me about every single thing? She took a deep breath, looking up at me with tears brimming in her eyes. I don't know. I don't have an answer that will make this right. It started as just talking. I felt lonely, disconnected, like we were drifting apart, and I didn't know how to bridge the gap. So when I saw Sam again, it felt easy, familiar. He was someone who knew me, before everything. Before everything. The words stung, each syllable a reminder of how long she had been pulling away from me. Do you even understand what you've done? I demanded. How you've destroyed the trust we built over the years? I do, she replied softly, her voice breaking. And I wish I could take it back, but what? I interrupted, unable to contain my anger any longer. You chose him over us, Lily. Every time you texted him, every time you met with him, you chose him. Her shoulders sagged, and she buried her face in her hands, sobs shaking her frame. A part of me wanted to reach out, to comfort her, but the pain was too raw, the betrayal too fresh. I'm sorry, James, she whispered, her words muffled but filled with a sincerity I hadn't heard in months. I never wanted it to end like this. I took a deep breath, my mind racing with memories, with all the moments we had shared, the life we had built together. But as I looked at her, I knew that there was no going back, no way to repair what had been shattered. What are we supposed to do now? I asked, my voice softer, the anger giving way to exhaustion. She looked up, her face streaked with tears, and for the first time, I saw the weight of her own regret. I don't know, she admitted. But I want to try, if you'll let me. A bitter laugh escaped my lips. Try? After everything? How am I supposed to believe anything you say? She reached out, her hand hovering just above mine, her gaze pleading. Please, James. I know I made mistakes, terrible ones, but I still love you. I just lost my way. The words hung between us, heavy and uncertain. I felt my resolve falter, memories of the woman I had loved clouding my judgment. But I forced myself to stay strong, to remember everything I had uncovered, the lies she had told. I need time, I said finally, pulling my hand back. Time to figure out if I can even look at you without seeing the betrayal. She nodded, swallowing back her sobs, and slowly stood up, looking at me one last time before heading toward the door. As she left, the sound of her footsteps fading down the hall, I felt an overwhelming sense of emptiness. I had gotten the truth, yes, but it hadn't brought the closure I had hoped for. The days that followed were filled with a strange, oppressive silence. Lily stayed with a friend, giving me the space I had asked for, but her absence felt like a void. I went through the motions of my life, returning to work, spending time with friends, but it all felt hollow, as if a part of me had been taken away. Tom called regularly, checking in, offering words of support. He suggested counseling, therapy, anything that might help me process the pain. At first, I dismissed the idea, feeling too numb to even consider it. But after a week of sleepless nights and endless questions, I realized I couldn't do this alone. I started therapy, hesitant but desperate for some sense of direction. The sessions were challenging, forcing me to confront the depth of my hurt, to unravel the complex layers of trust, love, and betrayal. But slowly, I felt a shift, a gradual release of the anger and resentment that had held me captive. One evening, about a month after our confrontation, Lily reached out, asking to meet. I agreed, feeling a mix of apprehension and curiosity. We met at a quiet cafe, a neutral place that didn't hold the memories of our life together. She looked different, more reserved, her gaze downcast as if the weight of her choices had finally settled in. "Thank you for meeting me," she said, her voice soft. "I know I don't deserve it, but I wanted to tell you. I'm leaving the city." I felt a pang of surprise, the unexpectedness of her words catching me off guard. "Leaving?" She nodded, a sad smile on her lips. "There's nothing for me here anymore. I thought I could fix things, that somehow we could rebuild, but I realize now that it's not fair to you. I've hurt you enough." For the first time, I saw the depth of her regret, the genuine sorrow in her eyes. She wasn't the same woman who had deceived me, who had lied to my face. This was someone who had faced her own demons, who had come to terms with the damage she had caused. "I want you to know," she continued, "that I will always regret what I did to you, to us. I don't expect forgiveness, but I hope you can find peace." I nodded, feeling a strange sense of closure. "Thank you, Lily. I don't know what the future holds, but I hope you find what you're looking for too." We parted with a quiet understanding, an unspoken acknowledgement of the life we had shared and the one we were leaving behind. As I watched her walk away, a weight lifted from my shoulders, a final release of all the pain and anger I had carried for so long. Returning home that night, I felt different. Lighter. Stronger. The memories were still there, but they no longer held the power to control me. I had faced the truth, confronted the pain, and emerged on the other side. For the first time in months, I felt a sense of freedom, a quiet but powerful resilience. I didn't know what the future would bring, but I knew I was ready to face it, to build a new life on my own terms. As I looked out the window at the night sky, I felt a spark of hope, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, there was a way forward. And in that moment I knew I was finally ready to start over. I want to express my heartfelt gratitude to each and every one of you for watching my videos, sharing them, and supporting me along the way. Your views, comments, and likes are the driving force behind my passion to create captivating and unexpected stories. Every tale I share is more than just a plot. It's a journey of emotions, lessons, and reflections that we experience together. Your engagement brings life and soul to this channel. Thank you for sticking with me until the very end of each video, because the finale of every story is where the real impact lies. I promise to continue delivering twists and turns that surprise, inspire, and resonate with your hearts.